After making the Western Conference Finals back in 2022, led by the duo of Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson, the Dallas Mavericks went into 2023 with some changes. After losing Brunson to New York, the Mavericks ended up with a pretty disappointing season. They started off really slow, Luka didn't really have any help, so they ended up finishing 38 and 44, 11th in the Western Conference, but they did make a blockbuster trade during the deadline of that season to give Luka a new running mate in Kyrie Irving so that they could kind of just have something to build off of going into the 2024 season. And they did just that. They made their first finals run in the Luka era and their first as a franchise since the Mavericks won the finals back in 2011 versus Miami. During that season, they made key moves like acquiring PJ Washington from Charlotte and Daniel Gafford from Washington, which essentially changed their ceiling to a contender. But it was clear when they got to the finals that this team isn't ready to win a championship just yet. They needed more shooting, needed some better defenders on the perimeter in that roster, and it kind of leads to the Mavs team that they have this season, and why the title says they're better than ever before. The Dallas Mavericks added more wing depth on the roster in Klay Thompson, Quentin Grimes, and Najee Marshall during the offseason, and it's definitely paid dividends for this team, as I believe this is the best roster that Luka has ever played with in his career. And right now, it's kind of showing that. The Mavericks are 17-9, good enough for 4th in the Western Conference, and they've been a team that recently I've watched, and I could see them making a finals run this season again, and potentially giving a better fight versus a team like Boston compared to what they did last season. The Mavericks right now on the offensive side of the ball are elite. And it's something you'd expect, obviously, when you have Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving as your two main offensive engines every night. But I really like the production that they've been getting from the others, like PJ Washington and the guys that they brought in over the offseason that I mentioned earlier. They just fit perfectly, and it fits into what Dallas wants to do on offense, and they're producing at a higher level than I expected. The Mavs offense right now ranks 4th in effective field goal percentage, 6th in three-point percentage, not taking very much threes. They're 21st in three-point attempts per game. But, like I said, they're efficient, and they're a very good rebounding team, making them one of the more unguardable offensive units in the entire league. Then on the defensive side of the floor, they've kind of been fluctuating in and out of being a top 10 defense. Right now, they're 11th in defensive rating, which leaves them just on the outside looking in as one of those select few teams that are in the top 10 in both offensive and defensive rating. But I think they got enough pieces on that end to make that climb with the interior presence of guys like Derek Lively and Daniel Gafford, mixed in with the defensive guys like Grimes, Marshall, and even Klay Thompson at this point of his career, still being good enough on the perimeter to make things work. And when you look at this Mavericks team as a whole, I believe they've gotten better just as a collective. I mean, you look at this team in that Western Conference Finals run back in 2022, and it was very much like, I don't know how to explain it, but they just weren't actually deep enough to probably win the finals that year. I mean, they had some nice players, and Brunson was coming into his own, but it probably wasn't enough. And the rebounding was crazy. I mean, I remember Kevon Looney was looking like prime Dennis Rodman in those games. And then, you look at them now, and they've got actual guys that are pretty good rebounders on this team, something that they improved on. Then you look at last season. The perimeter defense wasn't great, in my opinion, versus Boston. It kind of got exposed. Luka was getting exposed. Kyrie wasn't great. And they go out there, and they add some wings. Quentin Grimes, one of the best point-of-attack defenders in the league. Klay Thompson, yes, he isn't the same defender that he used to be, but he's still serviceable enough. He's better than what they had last season. Najee Marshall got the reputation as a really good defender. He is continuing to keep that reputation going this season on Dallas. Everything just clicks, and this front office has done a good job of plugging in the holes that they had on the roster in previous playoff runs. And you look at this team now, and it's like, this is the most complete team they've had in the Luka era. Easily. It's easily the most complete team they've had. And I think it's them and Dallas as like my top two threats to come out of the West, with like Memphis being right below them on that list. It's those three teams, and Dallas right now, scary team. You got a guy that's probably a top 5 player in the game on that roster, and Luka. You got Kyrie that he can turn up at any moment and play and be one of those guys that you're just like, take me home and let's get this W kind of guys. This Mavericks team's elite, and they're just, like I said before, an improved roster by a mile compared to what they had just 2-3 seasons ago. And they could very well make a finals run for a second consecutive season if things go their way for the remainder of this season, barring injury and etc. Anyways, that's going to do it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my latest video on the Memphis Grizzlies and what they've been able to accomplish so far this season, being one of the more underrated teams in the game. This has been the Checkup, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.